it begins with us being a Grenadian first and foremost, before we align ourselves with any political institution. And of course, our Constitution provides for freedom of assembly and freedom of association, and persons, of course, have the right to belong to any political party of their choosing.
But the question is, what makes the DPM a genuine national movement? Is it simply another political vehicle campaigning for relevance?
Not at all. I believe that in Peter David, we have the brightest, the best, and the most experienced political leader at this time. More than that, the message of the DPM is that, and you have heard us for a while, even before I joined the movement, became swept by the movement. You'd have heard a message of reconciliation. You'd have heard a message of let's come together and build this country. Let us forget the political tribalism of the NNP or the NDC. Let us stop going on national television or radio or social political platforms and call one another dogs and puppies and animals and disparage each other because we have different political affiliations. After all, we have been disparaged, we have been referred to as subhumans by other races and so on for 400 years and exploited and so on. Why do we honestly believe that we should continue to look at another black brother and refer to him as an animal and that sort of thing? So that I believe that the DPM, in all of its utterances thus far, have sought to raise the political discourse and debate. We say challenge us on policies. Let's debate policies. I do not want to re-enter politics to speak ill of the person of Deacon Mitchell and to speak ill will of the person of Mr. Eminent Pierre. I want to respect them and respect their families and respect the fact that they belong to political institutions of their choosing. And all I ask is that we are respected in return. So I believe that the DPM has brought a fresh air, a fresh breath, to the national political landscape. And we are saying to persons, the political leader said, when we are going to the Congress, you can come with whatever color you want. Green, yellow, pink.
But let's be honest. What percentage chance do you think the DPM have in forming the next government?
I believe we're going to win the next election, hands down. I've said that to the political leader, and I've said that to members of the party. I'm not in this, there is if you go on the ground all the time, persons honestly believe that DPM could win 3 or 4 or 5 seats. I believe we're going to win the majority of seats. And I say that in all sincerity. I'm not saying that as a Winston Churchill. I'm not saying that as a modern-day Donald Trump to say I'm going to obliterate you. I'm going to answer.
You honestly believe that this is possible?
I think it is possible. I believe it is possible.
We have to take a break, Ali, when we come back. Viewers, please stay with us. We'll be right back to continue this conversation. Stay with us.
In Grenada, sports aren't just a game, they're a way of life. They teach discipline, teamwork, and resilience. They inspire the next generation to push boundaries and chase excellence. That's why the Investment Migration Agency of Grenada is proud to support sports initiatives as part of our commitment to youth and national development. When we invest in sports programs, we invest in the future. We invest in the health and well-being of our youth, and we invest in broadening Grenada's reach, proudly connecting our athletes, our talent, and our nation to a global community. Together, we all go further. The Investment Migration Agency. Unlock the possibilities.
Some invitations are worth saying yes to. Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited is celebrating 15 years of its Pump It Up Family Fun Walk. Join us on the Sister Isle of Carriacou on April 19th from the Alexis Food Stores at 3:30 p.m. and mainland Grenada on May 3rd from the SSU camp in Point Salines at 3:30 p.m. as we celebrate 15 years of saying yes to family, fitness, and fun. Register now. Get ready to pump it up with us. Individual packages are $25 and groups of 3 or more are $20 per package. All proceeds will go to the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council. For more information, visit our website or any of our retail banking units.
Welcome home.
Bring the flavor, the love, and the legacy. This Mother's Day, it's more than cooking. It's storytelling on a plate. Mama's Pot, where every dish tells a story. Stay tuned. The heat is coming.
Welcome back, viewers. We're here with Ali Gill. He is the Deputy Political Leader of the Democratic People's Movement and, of course, the candidate for St. John's. Ali, the government has made it very clear in talking about this transformational agenda. They're claiming that transformation is on. They're claiming roads, infrastructure, digital services, education reform, a creative economy. But at the same time, your political leader, Honorable David, came out and said, this is what he said. He said, Project Polaris, the government is building a medical city on paper, while basic health care for many is a distant dream. It's not transformative. The government has a different story. They're saying, look, we've raised over 150 million US dollars. We've raised this at very good rates, 1.5%. We've acquired significant lands. We have mobilized the country around this. We want to transform health care. Why is your party, that is, certainly the remarks by your political leader, don't indicate there's any support for this project? Certainly he was not there at the opening. So what is the message you're saying? What is the party position on this very critical and important project according to the government?
Let's begin with the word transformation. And forget what the political leader would have said to begin with. Do you as a Grenadian, or when you walk around the streets of Grenada, do you feel a sense of transformation in any real sense for the past 4 years or thereabouts? There has been none. I have joked with my friends that the only transformation that this government could only speak of is the attempt to change the meaning of the word transformation. There has been no meaningful transformation. So there's been no transformation whatsoever in this country. None whatsoever. There's been no transformation. Well, let's get to the Project Polaris issue. The DPM supports any advancement in the healthcare system in Grenada. We deplore the fact that today our general hospital and medical centers and pharmacies across the country do not have medication for our nationals, especially persons who are from a economically challenged background. Access to health care, access to medical care, or we believe that, for instance, the Guelph Health Center really and truly should be converted into a polyclinic. The issue of primary health care across the country. The issue of the improvement of Princess Alice Hospital in Maribor and the hospital in Carriacou, so that persons in those communities can be served with the best possible health care that they can have. And of course, our general hospital must be in peak pressure. Now, what we have as Project Polaris is now turning out to be a seismic national scandal, nothing less. A seismic national scandal, and that point must be made forcefully. I say that because, one, let's look at the land transaction to begin with. This land was purchased by a private company using government bonds and so on. In November, the deed is dated November 30th, 2023. Right? It was purchased by this private company with government shares and The Attorney General says 3 prominent secretaries are directors of this company and so. And purchased from Grenada distillers, and a mortgage was established not by the banks or the credit unions or some international financial institution, but essentially mortgaged by the vendors to the vendors to begin with, where really and truly 36 million EC dollars that is paid semi-annually to this company with a 5.5% interest or thereabouts.
That's the Grenada Distillers.
Yes,
That's correct.
I have the proper names of the company, and maybe if you allow me, let me make reference so that I am accurate.
Sure.
Right? Yes, so that that's extremely important.
Sure.
Right? Grenada Real Estate, the vendors being Grenada Real Estate Corporation. All right. Now, in August of 2024, you will have another company, Partners for Development and so on, purchasing 3.2 acres or thereabouts of lands from this same vendor that sold to the private company where Polaris is. The directors of this new company now is the Prime Minister and Miss Andrea St. Bernard, who carries many titles. She is the project sponsor of Project Polaris, and she is the business ambassador, among other significant titles. The long and short of it, she's also the treasurer of the National Democratic Congress, and a very powerful woman in the government and in the country. Herself and the Prime Minister are directors of this 3.2 acres of land that when you look at the plan, it is bordered by state lands. You know, what that means is that that purchase again is premised on a similar payment system, the mortgage to the Grenada Real Estate, the vendors. This time they pay quarterly, not semi-annually, not twice, they pay 4 times a year and so on and so forth. But what it does, and I've heard persons speaking on behalf of the government to say there is nothing illegal. And that is so. Nobody is accusing the government of doing anything illegal. But what it does, it is that, let us make this absolutely clear, it is inconsistent with the best practices of transparency and accountability in government. And I say to you this evening that an NDC led by Tillman Thomas, that an NDC government with Peter David in it, such a transaction would never have transpired to begin with. Those two gentlemen I know stands for transparency and accountability at all levels, and such a transaction would not have surfaced. Because you see, that transaction lacks transparency. It is opaque. And I want to, if you will allow me, to make these few points about Project Polaris and the land. So I'm not dealing yet with the project per se.
Yeah.
But if you begin from the very beginning, let's say the land is foundation. The land is where, for the project to proceed with, the transaction of the land is itself creates issues of conflict of interest, creates issues of, let us say, insider advantage. Because in my opinion, the Prime Minister and Ms. St. Bernard would have known of the purchase of the other 83.2 acres of land. And they would know everything of the investment of Project Polaris, of 250 million US. And what do you think would happen? You have heard many hats yourself,
yes.
One of which is a distinguished farmer. And you know that if a massive $1 million project is constructed next to your farm, then obviously the value of your land and so on would go up as well. So that, you know, it does not just the optics, that does not look right. And as much as we can say that it is not legal, can we say that it is not ethically wrong? Can we honestly say that it's not ethically wrong? So it raises issue of conflict of interest. It raises issue of insider advantage. What is the public perception? The issue of trust in the government. And as I said, when you put this, have this land owned by a private company, it then bypasses the accountability requirements of public ownership, so that there is no real parliamentary oversight. There is no public auditing of the finances of the companies. What happened to the minutes of the meeting of the company? The trading, the business of the company is a private company.
So your main issue is transparency concerns, trust deficit. But are you against the project or against how it's been implemented?
I'm getting to that. Now, one, it's sort of been turned. Have you seen a drawing of the project? Have you seen an environmental impact assessment of the project? Have you seen, has any application been made to the Public Development Agency for approval and so on of the project? We speak of with regards to the financing. Let us acknowledge that the $100 million US fund from the Saudi funds was earmarked for work with regards to environmental impact around certain areas, St. George's and Grenville, and dealing with flooding and so on. Yeah. I revisited that issue and so on and so forth. Is it that, so that, one, then we have the issue of, we know that we do not know the fees for the consultants of the Project Polaris, which is a company headed by a young Mr. Dolan. We don't know the contract of the consultant. We know that with the hospital that this Project Polaris is affiliated with, that we have to pay a fee of $2.5 million.
That's correct. That's what I was saying, yes.
Right, so we get into that.
Yeah.
We have not...
Mount Sinai.
We speak to 250 beds, Mount Sinai, 250 beds.
Yes.
We have not seen anything with regards to the staffing for that hospital in terms of doctors, nurses, technical persons, and so on. $250 million for the building. We do not have a costing for the equipment and the fitting of the hospital, the maintenance cost, and so on and so forth. Then we look at the issue of accessibility for Grenadians. And they speak of national health insurance, which does not exist. So that there are more questions than answers with regards to Project Polaris. And that is our greatest concern. And that is why the political leaders say there's something on paper, because the government has failed, despite the fact that they had a third turning. In all of the public meetings and they say consultations and so on, it was never, this issue of the land purchases and so on was never discussed at the parliament. Discussed at the level of the public consultations and so on, which was had and so on. It's like now it is breaking news.
If DPM was to assume power tomorrow, would you continue, renegotiate, or cancel Polaris?
I cannot stay on a television program and determine on my own whether or not the DPM forming the government will cancel Project Polaris. That will be highly improper of me to do. But I can say to you that one of the first order of business will be to review that project. And because you see, part of the problem that we have in Grenada and Grenadians, as a Grenadian, is that the government have said to us that, you know, they're going to give us information on a need-to-know basis, so that we do not have all the information that the government would have. So that
explain to me, what do you understand by a need-to-know basis? What is implied here?
It's a flagrant violation of all democratic principles known to man. In that here you have a government, in the NDC that I was involved in, we were schooled in the principle of transparency and accountability. We were schooled in the principle of government is the people's business. So that, and that is why I said to you, there is no way Uncle Tilly will be buying land anywhere close to where you have a national public project. That would not happen under Uncle Tilly. That would not happen under Peter David. That's the point I'm making to you. So that when, let us look at the issue of the reader. that the application was made by the U.S. For the Prime Minister to speak to that issue, a journalist had to leak the story, so to speak? No. If you look at the conduct of other Prime Ministers, especially Pierre in St. Lucia, he speaks to the nation and says, this is what is happening. No, we do not expect to know every negotiation or every little thing at the government. No, there are some things and so on that obviously would have to be confidential at some stage and some point. But you cannot say to us that you are embarking on the greatest debt that we should incur post-independence and say to us that we need to know. And so many questions have been asked. The answers are not forthcoming, and it gives this sense of clearly it is a major case of lack of transparency.
But Ali, if you listen to the Prime Minister post cabinet press conference, they talk about
post cabinet.
Let me make this point. Hold on. They make the point about massive road networks, infrastructure upgrades, visible progress. Are you dismissing this real development? They recently announced also a number of major projects. There's 4 big ones coming. 2's been announced. Going the route of design, build, and finance. These are big projects coming, major infrastructure in St. John's, Mabuya, in the south of the island. We see road networks. Are you dismissing these significant?
No, I'm not. These are clear signs of a desperate government that are endeavoring to woo the electors on the next time around, are running in their 4th year to get all these projects off the ground. We had the budget was delivered a few months ago. Well, any details came from the Minister of Infrastructure Development with regards to these projects? All of a sudden, all these things, the announcements have been made. So that, and that's why I joined the DPM, because we need to change the culture of politics and development in this country. Why is it that for 4 years, nothing significant has happened? And now all of a sudden, Project Polaris, Mabuya Road, will this road have been abandoned since Oyoho? The Closure Road. Let us complete the Closure Road before you start the Mabuya Road. The entire community was cut off from its tongue. They had to, Closure people had to go to Grenville to go to the market in Guam where they sell their produce, because Closure is essentially an agricultural community. That road work straddled both administrations. It's just like the fish ban. Started by NNP, continued by NDC. And both administrations have had significant time to remedy both situations. Now they have created a passable piece of thing. I traverse Closure Road weekly, basically, because of my work and because I go to the community to relax from time to time. And since vehicles are now able to traverse that road, all the work stopped. It's like we're waiting again for another disaster to happen, and the people cannot pass in Closure for the government to go and complete the road in Closure. So if there is anything coming out of this chit-chat this afternoon, is for a call for the government to complete the Closure Road forthwith.
And I want to go there, because you know the candidate for St. John's, yes? And St. John's, the government announced the Mabuya Road, significant road. When you drive through St. John's, you see street lights along the road, solar street lights along the road. I mean, and more developments. But how, what's your rating on your present parliamentary representative? Why you think you're putting yourself up? It means that you want her replaced. You want to replace her. What are you going to be doing different there? What hasn't she done?
I say this to you, that with the politics of the DPM, I do not want to come on a television or a national program and say that the parliamentary representative of St. John, Ms. Kieran James, have done nothing.
But you're seeking to replace her.
I would not say that she have done nothing. In other words, if you look carefully of all the parliamentarians who have been in government in different administrations, they would have done something, even if it's a little thing. What I can say to the people of St. John's, and what I can say to you, is that I will do much better. In that I would provide St. John's with powerful and purposeful leadership. And that these projects that we've had long-standing, St. John's have suffered. Mawia Road has been the way it has been for a generation. As a young boy growing up in Marigot, I used to run from Marigot to go to Guelph to look at football and basketball and walk back down passing through the Mawia Road. And I heard the Prime Minister speak of the Mawia Road. I will urge that all proper engineering and scientific studies that should be done to ensure that whatever investments are made on the Mawia Road, that 10, 15 years from now, or after its completion, that we do not suffer the same fate. Because there are serious issues with the soil and so on and so forth. So let's make sure that in a rush to do it before elections, to see if you could win St. John's, which is an impossibility.
Yeah.
Yeah? That you do something as a road, and then years later we have to revisit the issue. So that I ask respectfully that all the relevant studies have been done. Now there are serious issues with this Reno project. How come Reno getting all these projects? I don't know where they're getting their material from, like cement and so on and so forth.
They're providing significant employment in the St. John's area?
Oh, we could do the employment because there's high unemployment in St. John's, especially among the youths. High unemployment. I saw some time ago, I think the Minister of Foreign Affairs speaking with regards to how low the unemployment rate is. He should just simply visit St. John's. Indeed, he should go to St. Patrick's West for once and see how the young people in St. Patrick's West are looking for meaningful and purposeful jobs. 2 days road work. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about sustainable economic livelihood for young persons and for women and so on and so forth. To send their children to school, put food on the table, and to live respectful lives. So that, of course, any major project that this government can bring to St. John's is welcome. And I will attend the ceremony if so invited. But I'm saying that, no, in a serious way, that we must ensure that all the proper engineering and scientific work is done. Don't simply, and the other issues again with these projects, following a sort of board format, is that here again there is no bidding. So we are bypassing the public procurement. We're rushing to build these roads and so on. Are we getting the best prices, the best value for money and so on? I am of the respectful view that the desperation of this government to execute all of these public projects in the last year of its reign can very well spell economic ruin to this country. And this is not over-exaggeration and so on. We need, because even if these companies raise the money to do these projects, at the end of the day, the government have to pay back. At the end of the day, the taxpayers have to pay back.
But that's a high statement, economic ruin. The government has had a balanced budget since they came into office.
Well, the government has asked for a deferment on the debt obligations since the last hurricane in Grenada.
That is true.
But more than that, no, Brian, I want to expand on that point that I'm making.
Yeah.
Because when I say that, I'm not just, now the uncertainty with world and the world geopolitical issues, the war in Iran, what has happened in Venezuela, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, continues to create serious uncertainties in the world economy, the rise of oil prices. So that if the budget for Project Polaris, for instance, is $250 million last year, any significant rise and the fluctuation in energy prices will obviously influence the price for material, the price for labor, the price for shipping, delay in shipping, and so on and so forth. All of that will result in increased expenditure for capital projects. That's a fact. That's a statement of fact. So that if the government is not careful enough, what they have budgeted now can easily be inflated, thus leaving the country in a debt trap for generations. That is the reality. So that
is that tied in also to the design, build, finance? Because you enter in major projects without any immediate cash flow or recognizing where the funds are, means that it's going to be paid for In the future?
In the future, down the road. And,
Well-
and you're entering without a clear idea of the final cost.
That's correct.
Because many of the projects
Yeah.
that we have done has experienced serious cost overruns.
Yeah.
The Cliff Road,
Yeah.
that is still incomplete. The Molineux Road, all of these projects have experienced serious cost overruns.
And part of the issue here, you actually, the contractor is actually inheriting the risk. You pass in the risk of the project to the contractor, so you're paying for this. But Ali, Grenada faces high input bills. High youth unemployment is still there, and rising costs, as you rightly say. But what is your economic plan in simple terms, meaning the DPN? In simple terms, what's the approach?
The approach, one, when we speak of agriculture, we must speak about a serious food security program. For us to address our high food input bill in particular, we must be able to develop the agricultural sector in such a way that we can feed ourselves. And I know you have heard that story before. I know that every politician that has come here have said that. But I am saying to you that a DPM will deliver on that. Because one, you have to look at a sustainable farm labor program. Two, the revitalization and the repurposing of Marketing and National Importing Board. This administration, well, I think the nation knows what happens with MNIB.
But the government has a plan. They have announced a plan. There's delays because they're still seeking, reported by the Prime Minister, they're just seeking financial information, and they're still seeking the strategic partner.
That is one of the first things
Yeah.
the government did when they came into office. Within months,
Yeah.
they moved on a marketing board. If any serious government on assuming office will first of all study what they are meeting with regards to marketing board. Study what you're doing, the position that the institution is in at the time, what will it take to move it from point A to point B. You will do the costing and then you deliver. So that you do not just collapse the marketing board, which really and truly was an asset to the farmers.
Yeah.
And all of us can agree that it needs repurposing. So that you develop the plan and then you move. Not destroy and then you move, because you leave so much wanting. So that we speak of the agricultural sector. The blue economy. We welcome the initiative by this administration. It's one of the best things that they have done to establish that Ministry of the Blue Economy. The problem that they have is that they have not provided that ministry with proper leadership. The irony is that on the setting up of the Ministry of the Blue Economy, the next thing that happened was the fish ban. And the fishing industry is arguably, one of the biggest sector of the blue economy. So that the leadership that is provided in pioneering the Ministry of Blue Economy is not there. So that needs to be looked at. But we need to now expand and enhance and harvest the oceans, the seas. And I can say to you that I have developed with my training, and of course, we would need and utilize other technical persons in the fishing sector and so on and so forth. I believe that we need to engage the best minds in Grenada on that, but we have not been maximizing on the economic potential of our
One of the statements, I need to go there, one of the statements the political leader said, Honorable Peter David, is that they're going to make, correct me if I'm wrong, $35,000 as a starting grant or loan to all persons reaching the age of 35. How realistic is this?
Well, realistic? How do you mean?
Where's the money coming from?
I'll take you one place to begin with. Grenada is one of the few territories in the Caribbean, and let us not forget that the Economic Citizenship Program exists in the United States and Canada and so on.
But is it sustainable here? That's another
One-
question.
one point.
Fine.
But the economic citizenship program has not been used in Grenada to develop specific projects. Right? In Dominica, I know that Prime Minister Skerritt has used CBI funds to build housing and to build this and to build that. You can see projects there. In Grenada, no such thing exists. And I'm saying that the CBI resources, the funds that we garner from that industry, ought not to be used to pay salaries or recurrent expenditure, but should be invested in specific projects. And that investment which the political leaders spoke to with regards to giving a hands up to persons reaching a certain age, you can see that Barbados and Prime Minister Mia Mottley is on a similar path with regards to giving a hands up to newborn and so on and so forth. So that real leaders are seeing the need to give a startup to individuals and so on, because we have tremendous challenges in terms of persons getting resources. So that the money is there. It's how we use the money.
Okay. I want to go with the youth. What do you say to a young Grenadian who feels politics has nothing to offer them?
Vote the PMM. Vote the DPM. It's that simple.
Name one policy that would affect them within 12 months.
You want me now to give out the manifesto, so that the other. But 1 minute, no 1 minute. The Ministry of Youth Development need to be refocused. I spoke to on a previous program that one of the ministries that we are going to realign is the Ministry of Labor, and we are going to include the Ministry of Employment. The Ministry of Labor really dedicates itself to the settling of labor disputes. But we do not have an employment agency that actively and seriously seek out employment opportunities for nationals. So how can we then reduce the unemployment rate if we do not, in a serious way, purposely driven by the state, supported by the state, and an agency, an employment agency will be established in the DPM within the first 12 months. And that is an agency, so unemployed persons can be registered, XYZ, and find placement.
As you talk about employment, one of the critical issues facing agriculture or labor shortage in Grenada, would the party be open to importing labor from other CARICOM countries too?
One, on the issue of labor, that's a very important issue that I spoke to at length. The training of nationals in technical areas, plumbing, masonry, doing electrical works in vehicles and so on, the high welding and so on,
Skill set,
short of technical skills. So that will be addressed in a serious way in the DPM. Because for any serious national development to take place, we need to do that. With regards to the issue of agricultural labor, the DPM have already developed a template that we believe can effectively solve the labor problem in agriculture.
Right. Ali, I want to shift a bit because you've been for 3-4 years the chairman of the National Reparation Committee, Grenada National Reparation Committee. Tell us, I mean, the UN has intensified discussion on reparations. I mean, only last month an important resolution was passed. How important was it? And the fact too that you had 3 countries, the US, Israel, and Argentina, voting against this resolution. But interesting that the UK opposition leader felt that the government failed. They should have voted against it, stating that Britain was the first they acted forthright in abolishing slavery, led this struggle. But how important was this vote in the UN? What's next for us on this matter?
Resolution in the United Nations sponsored by Ghana is a momentous occasion and a pivotal point of the struggle for reparative justice. That resolution speaks to and establishes once and for all that the Atlantic slave trade and slavery was a grievous crime against humanity. Now, we have always known the position of the United States, Israel, and Argentina in this global struggle. The European Union, by and large, including the UK, they have abstained, and the argument is based on 2 points. One, that to say grievous would be to create a hierarchy of crimes against humanity. But we say to them, consider the centuries of the Atlantic slave trade and slavery, and the fact that slaves were considered to be subhuman. Consider that millions of Africans died for one in the Atlantic trade, slave trade. And to consider the lasting effects of the Atlantic slave trade and slavery, displacement of Africans everywhere, with the underdevelopment of African societies in the diaspora and in Africa, the removal of African artifacts, the fact that we have been stripped of our language, our culture, the lasting effects of Atlantic slave trade and slavery. No other race in the world has endured what the African race has done. That's a historical fact. Now, there's also the issue that, and you've seen the Reform Party yesterday or this week said that if they were to form the next government in the UK, they're going to ban countries that ban visas from persons from countries that support or advocate for reparative justice. I say to you that does not daunt us, that does not deter us. It is as if now it's such a privilege to go to the United Kingdom that we should not even speak with regards to reparative justice. But one of the real underlying fear that you get from the British public all the time, and I spoke to some journalists in The Guardian in response, and myself and Professor Beckles and former Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, and so yesterday, there's an underlying fear that you hear them speak of trillions of dollars, billions of dollars, that if we were to apologize and give reparations, that the British and the European economies will be bankrupt. And we said, no, this is because that argument surfaces because of the ignorance.
So answer the question here. What does success in reparations actually look like? Cash payments, development funding, or structural change? What is it? Development funding.
This is a cornerstone of the 10-point CARICOM plan.
Okay.
Investment in education, investment in healthcare, not necessarily Project Polaris. Debt forgiveness, transfer of information technology. In other words, there's also this initiative by the Repair Campaign that looks at the needs for development of CARICOM countries and so on, so that we can target what is it we need in agriculture, what is the kind of investment we need in agriculture. Do we need machinery, we need tools and so on for the farms, fertilizers. What is it we need in education? Do we need a new plant for the TAMCC and so on? So that these are the development funding.
Yes.
And it also includes programs for psychological rehabilitation as well, because slavery and slave trade has done a number of us. In terms of psychological damage, right? I don't think I have to go to that, but we continue to deny who we are as a people and so on. So that we do not expect a blank check from the United Kingdom or any country, Britain or France. We do not expect a one-off payment and so on. We expect that they will speak to us, as Professor Beckles always says, let us have a dialogue of how over a period of time. We do not expect what you have done for us, what you have done to us, the harm you have caused to us over 400 years, that it will, in 100 years it can wipe away. So that the struggle which we fight for is generational.
Generational. So we shouldn't worry if it doesn't happen in our lifetime.
It will happen in our lifetime.
It will. Okay, Ali, I want to move on because we run out of time, but geopolitical issues is abound. We see what's happening, the wars that are taking place, the leadership in America, how it's affecting us. But with all of this happening, how do you, what's your, and from a foreign policy point of view, how you judge the present government in a way that it has handled and managed the geopolitical crisis from the application for a radar to the visa issues? What's your take on how the administration has managed this whole issue, and also reflect also on the political parties' response? We've not heard, for example, any commentaries from the opposition parties besides the DPM, of course. But give me your take on this matter.
And can I say I can try to be objective?
Sure. Well, I hope you will. Yes.
Yes. First of all, let me say that I appreciate that the current geopolitical issues are not an easy one for the Prime Minister. And no one can sit and pretend that, listen, we have all the answers with regards to these issues, because sometimes you look at Truth Social on CNN and BBC and you see something new every day.
Yeah.
So that it is not an easy time. And I do not believe that we can just say that, you know, the government this and the government that. That's not what it is about. I think that for one, with regards to the radar issue, I would say to the Prime Minister that he had an obligation to inform the nation before some press leak on it. But I also would give him credit too for not agreeing, because that's who we are. So that I think that it was shrewd of him to delay this thing and so on and so forth. He was unsure of it and so on. I wrote an article when he said he had no comment in Trinidad about the military buildup of the U.S. And he said he had no comment, and I thought that he missed the boat, he missed the point. And I said, silence doesn't save us, because you know, the policies will affect you. That's the end of the day. And I thought that he should have been on the ball to speak about the zone of peace, and so on and so forth. And also you cannot, what the extrajudicial killing of fishermen in the waters of the Caribbean and so on, that is against any law. It violates international law and so on. And you cannot simply remain silent or stay mute on these issues, you know, and so on. So that I found the government to be wanting on these issues. The geopolitical issues globally has impacted CARICOM negatively. You know, you don't have to read the book, but Trinidad and Tobago, the utterances and the positions taken in recent times by Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar has hurt the region, because we are of the considered view that the strength of CARICOM unity, of CARICOM region right now is unity.
Yeah, collective sovereignty.
Yes, is the best way in which we can deal with the international threat is for the OECS.
So is CARICOM losing its how, because you're being the ambassador there for us.
It's a serious threat. It's not a good moment now for CARICOM, frankly.
Yeah.
We will see now the squabble with regards to the Secretary General, which is highly unfortunate and played out in public view. You can see that the speed, the lack of speed in which CARICOM responds to the assistance of Haiti.
And Cuba.
Yeah. And the fact that, you know, we are not raising our voices with regards to in support of and solidarity of Cuba. You know, in fact, we've had at least 2 prime ministers, one president, who are, you know, basically speaking about regime change in Cuba, which is highly unfortunate. Now, our government, I believe, CARICOM took an agreement on a decision with the $500,000 US, and I believe that our government was the first to give, although delayed.
Yeah.
But, you know, we get credit for that. But we have not done enough. Grenada has not done enough. The government has not raised its voice significantly in defense of Cuba. If there's any one CARICOM country that has benefited from Cuba tremendously, it has to be Grenada. yeah, from the international airport to the development throughout. The largest, the most significant investment in our health sector is provided to us by Cuba, the training of all the medical professionals and so on and so forth. So if there is anybody who cannot afford to be ungrateful to Cuba and Cubans, it has to be Grenada. And I don't think that we have lent our voices our voice in a more powerful way to Cuba. So that there have been a mixed bag coming from the government here in St. George's with regards to how it has handled the geopolitical
How
issues.
was the opposition?
What the Minister of Foreign Affairs has remained very quiet on these issues. I have not heard him on any issue. He doesn't seem to be busy at this time, and that's unfortunate. But that is just my opinion from where I stand, just from where I stand as a national. I haven't seen Minister, and that I really wish he could have been. He himself is a product of Cuba.
Of Cuba.
So that I really wish he could have been a little more public. Well, the opposition have not done any better than the government, to be frank. In fact, some utterances from the opposition ranks, they seem to be seeking to make cheap political mileage from government positions on the issue of the radar and so on. They were not heard for a while, looking to see if the government would make an error. And I thought, and I am of the view that there are some issues that when Grenada have to deal with, and we have to be confronted with, that we draw a political line. And the issue of the radar, I said publicly and so on that this is not an issue where one look to see to make a political advantage of. We support the Prime Minister's decision on not responding or saying no to the Americans in doing that. And that must not be an issue of a political advantage. There are some issues that we close ranks. At the end of the day, Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell is the Prime Minister of this country. He's the head of government, and there are some important issues that when Grenada has to deal with it, we have to close ranks behind our government and our Prime Minister and say, hey guys,
but do you think the communication was adequate? That's the point, to the public.
No, that's the point. The communication was not adequate at all.
So, Ali, it's historic fact that the U.S. State Department, the U.S. government, always, particularly in the Caribbean, Latin America, participates, shows a direct interest in election outcomes. What's your view on where that support is likely to come or go in our upcoming election? Do you think, well, first of all, do you think they are likely to want to influence the outcome?
It's quite possible. I will follow the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Guyana has been very vocal on issues of Guyana's national politics. I have noticed that. It is not lost on me that Vice President Vance is in Hungary supporting the president. The election is next week. And so that the U.S. have always seek to influence electoral outcomes. To them, it is part of their national interest. I believe that the elections in Grenada should be decided by Grenadians and the Grenadian interest. I don't believe that the DPM or any political party in Grenada really represents a threat to the United States interest. I think all of us support and certainly the DPM, we support strong relations with the United States. That's unquestionable. Our economy, in a real sense, is hinged to what happened in the U.S. We have a large Grenadian diaspora there. Remunerations is a significant part of our GDP. We have always had excellent relations with the U.S. Most of us, if not all, have family members living and residing in the U.S. We go universities, track and field.
Yes.
You name it.
Yes.
So that all of us, and certainly the DPM, we will continue to have very strong relations with the United States. It does not mean, however, that we will agree with everything that is said.
So Ali, you're unaware where they are likely to put their support In which political party? That was the question.
No, I'm not aware, and I want to believe that the DPM stand in pole position to have the support of the United States government.
Okay, I mean that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. But back to the politics a bit though. But why in 36? If you had, what will convince Grenadians why they should trust you and the DPM in this upcoming election? Why should they
The
trust
DPM have the most experience. The leadership, the DPM provides the Grenadian population and the Grenadian public and the Grenadian society with the best political leadership, the brightest, the most experienced political leadership at this time. And we believe that we have the best policies to take us together. We speak the message of unity. We speak the message of no political victimization. We say to Grenadians that they have seen the track record of the New National Party and the NDC for a long time. And you judge their messages. I mean, you know, what we've had, and I've said it, is that the country is between a rock and a hard place. I don't know if the hard place is green or the other thing is yellow and so on and so forth. But we've had that the issue of NNP do something wrong, the NDC, it's okay for the NDC to do it. And I have said publicly, and I see that claim going around, that the same measuring stick that we use for the NNP must be the same measuring stick that we use for the NDC. And I will say this to you, that if it was Keith Mitchell, Dr. Keith Mitchell, that was involved in the Polaris deal with his name on deed and so on, a lot of journalists and other people and so on would have been up in arms. Water couldn't wash him. So why is it any different for this Mitchell? You see, so that wrong is wrong. And that's the point. If we have to develop Grenada and so on, the standard we set for ourselves is the standard we must hold for others and for our brothers. So that I believe that the DPM represents the best choice. Not because I'm a member of the DPM, but I believe the message of the DPM resonates. No political victimization.
But one point here, one viewer, I just got a message from them, is saying, look, the land is owned by the people of Grenada. It's not owned by individuals.
Which land?
Where the land that was purchased.
That's a private. It's owned by a private company, and that's what we are saying.
Yeah.
It's owned by a private company. I've said that. The directors are the permanent secretaries and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of what happening in this land that we don't know. And what is the ownership? This land is held in trust for that company until the monies are paid to this gentleman. It is not a financial institution with transparency that we know these monies are paid and so on and so forth. So that's the issue. And what the caller must understand, yes, it is a private company, and yes, we're not saying that's illegal, but we are saying that this land deal, there are more questions than answers.
Even the Minister of Legal Affairs came out and said, this is a standard
it's not
quota that is used in business transactions, that the signatories or the directors are the permanent secretaries in the ministries.
It is not standard. It is used, but
Okay.
it's not standard.
It's not standard.
And it is legal. Nobody is saying that it's illegal. But I made the point that the transaction, it is inconsistent with the best practices of good governance.
Okay.
And that how much more do we know about this company? This company was set up and purchased the land since 2023.
Yeah.
And we are having a conversation about this company in 2025.
Yeah.
Did the person who asked that question, did he know that company in 2023 when it was established? Did the Prime Minister and the government and the Attorney General go to the Parliament and announce the formation of that company and say, hey, Grenada, we purchased this land for Project Polaris under this company name, these are the directors and so on? No, they're only now reacting because persons are saying, hey, what's happening here? Why not he did not go to the CDB and so on and get these monies and so forth? Why this guy? Why is it? Why
it comes down to transparency.
It comes down to transparency, and at the end of the day, we cannot overlook the fact that there's a conflict of interest. Months later, when the Prime Minister and Ms. Bernard are directors of a company that purchased 3 acres of land right there.
I'm out of time. Your closing comments, Ali.
I would say that tonight I would ask the listeners to give the DPM a listening ear. I said that to people all the time. Here is what we have to say, and you make a decision objectively. Yes? Let us be Grenadians first, and NMP and NDC and DPM after. Let us put Grenada first. And I believe that the DPM have the best policies, the best programs. We have as I said, the most experienced and best political leadership at this time. And I believe that a third party, we're not the third party, I say to them, we're not the third party, we are the party, right? And you walk across the length and breadth of this country and people are excited. They're excited about the DPM. They believe that what they're hearing is a breath of fresh air. And I just want to use this opportunity to say to Grenadians that we are a political organization, we're a movement of unity, we're a movement of togetherness, we're a movement of transparency and accountability, and if given the opportunity, we are going to do our utmost to develop this country and to bring a better life and livelihood to the Grenadian people.
Thank you, Ali. I just want to, just some closing comments here that we receive information that there is a Cuba Solidarity Initiative for this month. They are observing April 14th to the May the 14th. It's a nationwide humanitarian effort to mobilize support for Cuba. You'll hear more about it, but this is really, really positive. And you're going to hear more about it. So this is really very welcome at this time, given the situation in Cuba and the need for support. So viewers, that's all the time we have. We'll see you next week. Chris will be back with us. So until then, all the best. Bye-bye.
We are always ready to respond to your call.
And we are here.